And welcome to this week's episode of AI Would Agree. I have to admit, didn't initially plan on running an episode this week. I was going to have a long December off from boring you all with my face. However, an opportunity cropped up, which was too good to miss. And with no further ado, I'm going to introduce my guest, the one and only Martin Teasdale. Martin, welcome to the show. I can't believe that this hasn't happened before now, to be fair.
I know, we've been like ships passing in the night, haven't we?
Yeah, to be fair, I've probably been trying to make this happen for about 3 months, and I'm not sure whether I racked up more false meetings than you. But I think it was probably on my side. I think it was probably on my side. But we're here now. We finally made it. Good to have you on.
It was close. But thank you so much for having me. I love what you guys do. I love what you do, and it's very nice to be on this side of the table.
Yeah, there's a bit less work for you to do this today.
Yeah, I love
it's almost free publicity. Yeah, we were just kind of talking about that before the show started. It's surprising how much work actually goes into post production on these little podcast and webinar episodes. It's quite surprising, and it's quite a few rabbit holes to go down. But I guess it's worth it from my perspective, because it just gives something different that hopefully just causes a few people to ask a few questions as they go about doing their jobs. Yeah, good to have you on, Martin. And as I start the show with everybody else, tell me, how did you get into contact centers in the first place? What was the story?
I'm sure it's one that's common to many. I left uni. Believe it or not, my degree was in politics and international relations. And I left uni. I was living in London at the time, and I was extremely naive. I'd gone to uni to play football, have a good time, and in the final year, I did get interested in my course. But when I left, I was wildly naive. My mum and dad were in the Air Force, and we'd always moved around and had an Air Force house. But my dad was leaving the Air Force, so they left. I was left with nowhere to live, technically. So I got a flat in London, and very quickly realised I need to get a job. And I must have gone. It was at a time when jobs were in the newspapers, and I must have gone for over 100, I think. And in the end, saw an advert for customer service rep for a stationery company, Nice Day they were called, and it was in Wembley. And I went along, had the interview, and that afternoon they said, "Yeah, you've got the job. Come along." Our training was 2 hours long. It was about our catalogue, and well, half was on the catalogue, half was on the phone system, and then it was in a porter cabin, and you went across the road, you went across the car park from the porter cabin into the contact center, and they just kind of opened these double doors, and it was like mayhem in there, just the noise, and the people stood up and chatting, high-fiving, and I thought, oh, this looks. My first impression was, I thought this looks great. After about 2 hours, I thought, I just don't know what I'm doing. I wasn't getting any sales. The people next to me were flying. It was, and I thought, I'm not going to stick this out. But I ended up staying there about 18 months. I think I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I think everyone's probably said this a lot. I know they have on my podcast, or just in chats that you have with people, that it's the people around you. If you could have a graph of how much you laughed in a day, being in the contact center, being both as an agent and then team leader, just used to belly laugh every day at something or with someone. And that kind of, I think that can be quite addictive. And I just stayed. I stayed in the industry ever since then. I found a photo. I was looking for it the other day, and it was me at my desk at Nice Day. It may have been just before. So one of the products was bubble wrap, and you had to prospect to get businesses as clients. And I got one that was like a boutique art gallery in London, and they were lovely people. You'd have some really nice chats, and they said, "Oh, we need to put in an order for some bubble wrap," and bubble wrap went up from like just a tinfoil size up to like 6 foot if you were wrapping stuff. And I sent them 30 rolls of 6 foot bubble wrap by mistake, and they had a picture of themselves stood next to it.
That's a great story. I love it. Yeah, if I remember back when I first started, I remember being asked if I would go for an early dinner break because we were going to be short staffed at dinner time. And bear in mind that my desk was next to my now wife's desk, so I was busy trying to impress her and stuff, being a bit clever and things. And I remember saying, "Yes, I'll take an early dinner," and I didn't realise they were going to put me on dinner at 8:30 in the morning. And she was like, "What are you going to eat for your dinner?" I was like, "Well, I've brought a frozen curry." And she was like, "But it's 8:30 in the morning." I was like, "Yes, but it's dinner time, and I've brought a frozen curry. So I'm going to go and eat my frozen curry." And I went, put it in the microwave. I ate it, came back to the desk, and she was like, Did you really eat that frozen curry at 8:30 in the morning?" I was like, "I absolutely did, and I'm ready to go. I'm set for the day now. Let's move on." So yeah, I think
She thought, "This is the man for me."
This is a guy. Yeah, it was all downhill from there.
You know what? As well, I can remember. It was the people around you. We had. I guess for its time, it was pretty swish because it was still green screen, but it was connected to the phone, so you would get the customer prospect details on your screen as the call was being made. But I managed to get into the guy sat next to me was a guy called Mark Matthews. I don't know if he'll be watching this. He's kind of still in the industry, but I got into what would have been his database of his prospects for the day before he started his shift, and just changed all the names of the potential buyer, because you'd have, this is potentially the person responsible for being the stationary buyer. So you'd start with, "Oh, hello there," and he was next to me going, "Oh, hello there. Can I speak to Mr. Magoo, please?" It was just the practical jokes and things that you could play on each other. It was just amazing. It's just brilliant. I'm sure at some point I should say I did it because I loved serving customers and helping people, and but actually it was more just the people I was working with. And then I stayed in it ever since. Moved to different companies, doing different things, worked and managed abroad and stuff like that. And it's just been an industry I love, and I've stayed in ever since.
It's one of the things that I find really rare is to come across somebody who really understands why they enjoy the job that they've got or done, or their career that they've had, and what about it made them want to carry on doing that job. And a lot of people think it's like, "Oh, well, it paid well, or the hours were good, or it allowed me to balance my family and stuff like that." And I'm like, yeah, that will have contributed, I've no doubt, but that's not what got you at 6 o'clock in the morning on a cold, frosty day with a foot of snow outside, and you still got to work. What happened to make you want to do that? Because if it was all the above, you probably just wouldn't have bothered. You'd have jacked it in. You'd have gone elsewhere. Even people who claim to hate their jobs, and probably do hate their jobs, to be fair, have an element within their job that they really enjoy, and their ideal job is moving out of their current job and doing more of that little thing that keeps them going at the job that they're doing. Yeah, it's interesting. And speaking of which, you've now moved on. So you've moved on from BPA. What's next for Martin Teasdale?
Well, I'm kind of planning it for the new year, and I found myself more and more. The podcast started 3.5 years ago as a hobby, has grown and grown and grown. I'll be working with some people that want me to carry on and will kind of support me in that. That will be part of it. I'm really excited about just taking the podcast on another level. I won't really change the format. I'll be doing some different themes, but I just want to get, we, as you said, we were talking beforehand. I want to get a bit better with the audio and editing and things like that. And having the time to do that will be brilliant. And I think I just reached that point where the hobby was creeping into being the thing that got me up, the passion, the thing that I thought, I really want to highlight the good in our industry, share some great stories, kind of in a small way be the facilitator of inspirational stuff that if it has an impact on people in our industry and helps them stay in it and helps them thrive in it, that is a real buzz, an absolute real buzz. So it's going to be more of the podcast and more of that. And then there's also the kind of, I've always orientated towards team leaders. As I said, that being part of a team, leading a team, having a positive impact on people's lives over and above work has always been a passion of mine. And I want to do work that helps team leaders in our industry. So I've got the rest of this month to pull together some thoughts and ideas and launch it probably start of January to help team leaders. So it's going to be something in that space. It's going to be more of the podcast. And then, I'm open, everybody, whatever, whether that is to come in, like things that I've done for nothing would be nice to get some pay for, but I'm always going to share content regardless. There's not going to be a paywall and things like that, but I'm open to having lots of different income streams rather than my salary, where I never wanted to get to a point. The guys at BPA are great. They're very much like Mojo team, formerly TMAC. You guys, it's about great people coming together, being creative, doing things that add value in our industry. That's what I love about you guys. And in a slightly different lane, the guys at BPA were like that, and I stayed there longer than anywhere else in my career. But I never wanted to get to a point where I was just going through the motions, and I could see that point coming. So with the support of Bev and the family, and I've taken the slightly, sometimes on the dog walk, I'm just thinking, what the hell am I doing? So it's slightly scary, but if I look back through my career, the areas where I've developed the most, whilst at the time may not have been totally comfortable, have been because I've left my comfort zone or been forced out of it in a couple of instances. And I needed to do that. So I'm going to do more with the podcast. I'm going to do something with team leaders. And then I'm sure, even since letting people know I'm on garden leave, there's been a couple of bits of contact around just come in and do some consultancy and things like that. If I can help and I can add value and I like the people I'm working with, I'm open for anything.
Well, that's a broad brush to leave open. I'll be very careful with that.
Well, jack of all trades, master of none.
Do you know what? Like that used to be exactly what I thought of me until I figured out the thing that tied it all together, which was always good to figure out. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think there's probably a lot of people have in the past thought like, BPA, Mojo, are we not like competitors? And I think, to be fair, we've always had that friendly camaraderie competition sort of, like we've known each other long enough that it's kind of irrelevant, and like the world's big enough for everybody to get along and just play nicely together. So like, never really seen it that way, which is weird because it's one of the few businesses that I've worked with that like that's not the case. And I know that's come back the other way from you guys too.
It's a massive part of not just BPA where I was, but who I am as a person. Actually, collaborative competition. There's enough, as you say, there's enough space for everyone to win. The only person I'm in competition with is myself. And these are, cliches because they're true and they're used often and regularly. But people contact me and ask about advice for doing podcasts near enough exactly the same as what I'm doing, and I'm more than happy to help. One of the things when I started doing Get Out of Wrap that surprised me was, if you looked on Apple at the time, the only other ones I could find that were active were based in the States, and some of them were okay. There weren't any in the UK, and I just thought that is symptomatic of how we are perceived as an industry, which is, you only need to look at the business part of Apple Podcasts and go, right, there's so many on real estate, there's so many on recruitment, there's so many on HR. We need the more the merrier for contact centers, is my view. It's always been that way. And that concept of collaborative competition, we all benefit. People, if there's no point in just sticking to yourself and going, right, I'm just going to sort myself out and try and take other people down. And it's kind of like the expo is a physical embodiment of that, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's got choice. Everyone can walk around and see who they kind of connect with, who they develop relationships with, what type of kit suits wherever you're looking for. It doesn't, the more options and the more competition we have, the better. And I think that's the same for all aspects of our industry, because it means that we're talking about it. It means that the more people we have shouting about the good in the industry, the better.
Like two things for me. So first of all, if anybody wants to run a contact center relevant podcast that has hair, I mean, they'd be welcome to do it as well, because I feel like you, me, and Rob Dwyer are taking over the market at the moment. And I can see Rob's watching. So yeah, anybody who's got hair, you're at distinct advantage, because so far there's just those three baldies. The other side of things is, I think, especially in the UK, we have a big thing about imposter syndrome, and not feeling like, even if we are an expert in our own rights, not feeling like we've got something that's worth sharing with other people, or that other people would look down on, we'd be frowned on for sharing it, like we're trying to put ourselves across as an expert when we're not. And for reference, I don't think anybody's an expert on anything. I don't think there's any such thing. I think there's people who have more experience, who have a different thinking and different knowledge. I don't think there's any such thing as a true expert on anything. And I think it's much the same as posting on LinkedIn. The reason people don't post on LinkedIn is they don't think they have anything valuable to add. And guilty, when I first started posting, didn't feel like I came from a retail background and I'm posting about contact center relevant stuff. And I had to find my way around how I addressed that in a way that felt like I wasn't trying to tell people how to do their jobs, but actually found that I could lean back on a lot of that leadership experience that I'd built up over the last 20 years and help people in that, because ultimately the industries are very, very similar. And I think, my advice would be to anybody who's thinking about doing it, absolutely do it. Go all in, do it with both feet. Don't half-arse it. Just get involved and get it done, because the moment you start doing it, it gets easier. That first post, the first podcast, the second post. Actually, no, I lie. Second podcast's harder, because the first one, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. The second one, you know that nobody watched your first show. But by the time you get 15 done, guys, there will be some regular viewers. And even now, I look back at some, I release clips on a regular basis from some of the Mojo LinkedIn accounts and stuff like that. And I look, and they get like very little sometimes in way of engagement or likes and things like that. But I don't do it for the likes and the engagement. I do it because somebody might view that, who it just triggers something for them, and it might just change the way that they think, or it might just change what they're doing, or make them approach something in a different way. They don't have to like or engage with it for me to impact on them. And I think that's the beauty of it for me. I don't know what your thoughts are from your side of things and from Get Out of Wrap. But
I think imposter syndrome is a really interesting one, because I've had people who knew me many years ago say, you loved being with your team, but when you came to talk to senior leaders, you kind of had your eyes down. You weren't really sure of yourself. I'm amazed that you're doing this sort of stuff now. How have you kind of overcome that imposter syndrome? And a lot of the time, I think back to times when things went wrong. So I worked for a company that went into administration very suddenly, big surprise to all of us, and was out of work for a while. And then riding high in another company, just coming back from doing a great job in Turkey, I was made redundant, again, by surprise. And I think going through things like that massively teach you a lot, but also that kind of made me think, well, what's the worst that can happen? Well, it's just happened. So now I'm going to try and do things where I have an exit strategy. I'm going to be a bit more out there. And I think the other thing, I don't even know if this is a thing, but I've always thought, if you have can you have a positive apathy, right? And you mentioned it there about likes and engagement and stuff like that. This positive apathy is more about, it's whether the podcast or posting, I'm enjoying the process, right? I'm enjoying talking to a guest. I'm enjoying trying to create an infographic or sharing something or writing something. That's the part that I enjoy and I focus on, and the outcome will be the outcome. So when you meet people for the first time and you say that you do a podcast, one of their first questions is, how many listens or downloads or views or whatever do you get? And in a way, I kind of like the fact that Apple are just ridiculously hard to find anything out from. But I've never cared, genuinely. I haven't, and that may sound glib, but that's what I mean. It's like a positive apathy, which is, if it engages people and is picked up and it helps, that is amazing and a super, super buzz, and I love it. But actually, if I've enjoyed the process and I'm happy and it goes out there, that's the bit, that's what keeps me coming back to do more, is I like it, I want to do it, rather than thinking, oh, this one must be better than episode 130, must be better than episode 120 because it had 500 more of this or that or the other. It's never really come into my thinking, and it's actually something that we talk to manage a girls' football team, and we talk to the girls about that sort of thing, which is, you're here because you want to play football and you love football. It's the result will be the result. We've played brilliant in games and lost, or we've played okay in games and won. The outcome is the outcome. Let's just focus on actually being in the moment and enjoying it. And like you say, I can look back. Have you ever done it where you've gone back on your old LinkedIn posts? And I've seen some ones where I'm like, I don't recognize myself. I've seen some ones that I thought, oh, that's really good, and it had two likes. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't make it.
Yeah.
It's nice to get engagement and to chat to people via LinkedIn, but if you're posting because you want loads of likes, that's not it. Like I do a TikTok every day, near enough, whilst I'm walking the dog. And I've got the process down that I can I can do it sometimes on the walk, and I'll be lucky if I get double figure likes, but I still do it. I love it. I just love
It's like going to the gym.
It's like
going to the gym. Exactly. It's got to be consistent. And what I find is that people chase the audience and they try and produce content that they think the audience would like, which is fair to an extent, but it's also got to be about you and your interests and your experience. And rather than chase the audience, my advice to anybody who's out there doing the similar or even just LinkedIn, right, is the audience will find you. You just need to be you. Think about what you're doing. Yeah, by all means, put a strategy in place. By all means, try and grow things. Absolutely. But stay true to yourself, because the moment you stop trying to be you and try to be somebody else, you'll get called out and people walk away. And that's the important thing for me, is just being yourself. There's some interesting there's some great comments here coming through. So, Alan, welcome to the show. I'm conscious that it's also your first time watching. Good to have you along, buddy, and hopefully you stick around and carry on watching. So we're probably, after this week, it's going to be a break for a couple of weeks until the new year, but absolutely in the new year we are back with a bang. There's a comment. He posted up where we're talking about finding why you come to work and do your job. And Alan's point was you need to do whatever it takes to protect your attitude. Alan, couldn't agree more. Because the moment you stop being you, you're starting to do more things in your job that you don't enjoy than what you do enjoy. So I absolutely agree with that. You got Oliver mentioned friendly competition. Oliver knows quite well about that. Working in the sales training space, but absolutely, you never know what the future might hold. There's always kind of other ways to help each other further down the line, and the world's too small to not be helping each other, right?
And you said something about once you've got faith in yourself, and me and you could be given the same content, right? Let's say it was training, we could be given the same content, but we would definitely deliver it differently, slightly. We'd have different interactions, and you've just got to have faith that that's the case. And I think what is that saying? It is share and forget, receive and remember. So if you share freely for people, the people that receive it will remember you, and that's kind of always stuck with me. If I've got something, I see something on Pinterest that's a lovely infographic about emotionally intelligent leaders, I'm going to share it. I'm not going to hoard it. I'm going to share it and go, oh, this is brilliant, and see if people like it. And if it helps people be better leaders, then great. And it comes back to that kind of just, if you be brave, get out there, do it, and see what happens. The other thing I would say as well is you've got to have a nice filter or sieve for feedback. So I think once you put yourself out there, you are going to get feedback. And actually, sometimes the best feedback is the stuff that challenges you. But it doesn't mean to say that you have to do it. If people go, oh, I think you should do this, I think the podcast should look like this, and I think you should change that. If I'd have listened to all the feedback I had, it wouldn't be called Get Out of Rap, because nobody liked the name, but I loved it. So definitely just have a process for filtering feedback. I've had some great feedback, and some of the stuff that I remember the most has been really quite blunt and negative, but I've kind of assessed it and thought, yeah, you know what, there's validity in that. I'm going to make a change. And equally, there's stuff that I thought, well, not everyone's going to like what you do, and that's okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think if you put the stuff out in the right way, then you probably are going to annoy somebody in what you're doing. That's the whole point of, you just got to get off the fence a little bit sometimes and be a little bit in people's face in the right way, so that it causes a little bit of that polarization. And honestly, there is so much polarization in the contact center world. You talk about anything from MPS to AHT to scripting, and you will come across a whole swathe of people who agree with one, the other, or none of it. And I think, the more we talk about things like that within the industry, the better an understanding we all come to as to the weaknesses and strengths of everything that we do. And we can have a much more rounded opinion. Where it gets dangerous is where we just don't entertain that engagement and communication, and we kind of just drop off and do your own thing. That is danger signs for me. If I talk to a business, nobody within that business will have a communication with me, like even just a simple no thanks. That for me means they're probably not a good business for me to work with, because they're not our style of communication. And I think, the same for retail. When I think back to that space, the businesses that do well spend a lot of time and effort on networking with other businesses and learning from them and understanding their mistakes and their challenges and what they've done well. And I think, the contact center world does that a lot better than retail, if I'm fair, at times. I'll reserve that, apart from the loss prevention team in retail, because they're a fantastic community. I can't say much more than that. It's my passion was my retail days, was loss prevention. But
I think you make a really good point around, are you letting people within your contact center go out into the wider world to see what other people are doing, to have those types of conversations? Or are you worried that they might see things being done differently and then come back and be harder to manage? And I've seen both. Luckily, more of the former than the latter. But engage with your content, engage in webinars and some of the organizations that are out there. Go out and let your team leaders and your managers experience other contact centers, so that they come back and they can be positively disruptive. and have those types of conversations. Like you mentioned AHT, what an interesting one that is, because there are many that go, oh, we don't measure it anymore, and we certainly don't talk to our teams about it, all the way through to the other end of the spectrum, where it's still probably the one that's talked about the most because it's more directly linked to cost. And I think those are really interesting conversations to be part of and to facilitate, because if we are all coming from a place of love and respect for our industry and each other, we should be having conversations where we might have different opinions, because that's how we progress.
Yeah, and I think it's that iterative learning process for everyone, and I think anybody who's going through that process of learning to be a leader, that's a great tip for them as well, in terms of experiencing lots of different leaders. Don't have to take everything from every leader that you work with, but take one thing that they do really well and make it your own. You can't do it the way they do it. Don't try and do it the way they do it, but do your version of that same thing. And on the flip side of that, learn from the things that they do that really annoys you. I'll choose my words wisely. I'm not on Jimmy's podcast here. Learn from the things that they do that are clearly wrong by your ethics and morals, and make sure you never do those things. So you learn twice from every single leader that you work with. And as long as you're doing that, you will go a long way. When we stop learning is when we stop growing. So you've got to make sure that we've got that. And for contact centers, like, you need to make sure that your people are learning and growing always. Even when the chips are down, that learning and growth has got to happen. Otherwise, your retention is going to spiral out of control. Your agents are going to become disgruntled. Your customer service is going to suffer. It's big red flags for me as soon as that stops. Well, that was deep for a pre-Christmas conversation, right?
Yeah, love it.
So Martin, just before we head off, because we've passed the half-hour mark, people will be falling asleep on me now, because they do that. Once they listen to me for so long, they drop off and fall asleep.
Even with your new branding,
even with the new branding, yeah, I'm gonna get some strobe lights on next week. So just So, question for you: like, what's your plans for Christmas?
Big on the family. There'll be all kinds of family here. I'm for the first year, I'm going to be doing the cooking, actually. So we'll see how that goes. Talk about going out of my comfort zone. I do like to cook, but I've never done Christmas dinner.
Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of Christmas dinner. I'm a big fan. It is generally in our house, it's a 2-person job. We tag team it with little man, but yeah, much the same for us, kind of big family thing. Like, I'm still trying to drill it into my 5-year-old. He thinks Christmas is about the presents, and I get him, but I'm making sure that he knows that there's something that's way more important than that, and that's the family and friends side of things. So he's learning. He's getting there.
I thought you were going to say there's loads of football on.
No, yeah, I'm not allowed it. He knows how to watch it on BBC Sport on my phone though, so we're all good. We're all good. Awesome, good to have you on the show, Martin, and good luck with the next steps in the career. We'll have to stay in touch and let me know how it pans out. But thanks for coming on the show and sharing.
Yeah, thank you, and have a great Christmas yourself.
Absolutely will. Thanks everybody for coming along. Thanks for being engaging in the chat. It's always nice to see. The episode will go up on YouTube. The official polished version will go up on YouTube tomorrow, and I will be back in the new year. So we'll see you soon. Take care. Thanks everyone. Bye bye.